Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel and you're watching TechStrong TV. Hey, it's Friday, June 5th. Wow, 1 week down into June already. It's hard to believe. I've got to tell you, the last couple of weeks have been a bit of a rush for us here at Media Ops. You know, yesterday was our TechStrong Con, and we had almost, I think, 4,000 people for TechStrong Con, 50 speakers, almost 30 sponsor booths, 4 different tracks, 100 hours of video. It was quite an event from 9 in the morning East Coast time till 9 at night. So we covered the afternoon in Europe, virtually all day in the West Coast and across the U.S. and into Asia. I hope you had a chance to see some of the presentations. Many of them were just fantastic. I mean, from the most technical to the highest end, to talking about our present situation. The keynotes were amazing. The environment, our own Sofia Olova here at Media Ops and Salim Pardani, our COO, and the rest of their team just, I mean, outdid themselves. It really, I enjoyed live chat with the speakers while the presentations were going on. It was just everything you'd want in a virtual event there. Here's the good news. If you didn't see it, it's still up. You can't live chat anymore because the people aren't there. But you can still see all of the sessions. You could visit all the booths. You could actually look back at what some of the chats were, I think, even. So if you didn't see it, go to techstrongcon.com, log in, and do check it out. We will be playing some of the sessions from TechStrong over the coming weeks. I'm really looking forward to showing you and sharing those with you. We also made an announcement yesterday. I know we've been talking about with TechStrong and of course TechStrong TV, which kind of came out of TechStrong, that we were going to donate portions of proceeds to charities. There is an open letter across DevOps.com, Security Boulevard, and Container Journal about what we're doing with that, and it's a letter from me. But I'll tell you all watching it here right now what we've done, and that is, you know, when we first started TechStrong, it was about COVID and how technology would overcome and persist in the face of this global pandemic. And of course, between now and then, we've had more thrown on our plate. And I just don't mean the murder hornets or whatever they're called and these things. Of course, the last week or 10 days has seen the streets of the U.S. ablaze with protests, and I will say most of them peaceful. Some of the violent stuff and some of the outside agitators, you know, get a too big a share of the story. The stories about the protest, and really the protests are not the story. The story is racial injustice. And our letter addressed that as well. So we are making a $10,000 donation to the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is a leading light and has been fighting racial injustice and bigotry and racism and anti-Semitism even for a very long time. And then we're also making a $10,000 donation to the World Health Organization, because in spite, no organization's perfect, but the World Health Organization still represents the place where the world comes together to fight pandemics and fight disease. And we think that's a worthy cause as well. So that's where we're donating our money. You know, we didn't charge, and TechStrong is free for anyone. That money came from sponsor proceeds. And we do appreciate our sponsors. And we appreciate our attendees, and we really appreciate our speakers too, who literally from all over the world donated their time and talent and knowledge in doing these. Also, shout out to our video team here on TechStrong, the TechStrong video team from Digital Anarchist, Paul Gustafson and Brian Yaskulker and Andy and the rest of the team for delivering 100 hours of video yesterday, in addition to doing our daily show. So lots to go there. I have one other big announcement I want to make. You know, we started TechStrong TV really to help promote TechStrong and lead up to it, and to help you while you guys are all working from home and what have you. Doing a TV show like this for, 2, 3, 4 hours a day, every day, Monday to Friday, is a daunting task, as I found out. I have I have, just unbelievable respect for people who do this now, whether it's the Today Show or the newscasters or what have you. It's hard doing a show every day for that many hours. What we're going to be doing going forward, starting next week, is rather than doing TechStrong TV Monday to Friday, we're going to do TechStrong TV on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. We can replay an old a repeat on Wednesday and Friday, so maybe in case segments you missed. But we will be doing 3 days a week. They'll probably be a little longer as a result. They'll probably be 3+ hours a day. But we'll continue, bringing you news and interviews with the newsmakers in cloud native and digital transformation and DevOps and cybersecurity. So look for that on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and look for best ofs for Wednesday and Friday. And that'll start next week. All right. Let's jump into our show for this Friday, heading into the weekend. I've got some interesting folks to introduce you to. Number one, I've got Mark Herring, who actually I recorded this with Mark, and then shortly thereafter it was announced that he had left the company, Time Series Data, InfluxDB, and so this may have been Mark's last interview as CMO at Influx. But we spoke to Mark about remote workers and COVID and how it's affecting things. Next, I was really happy to catch up with my friend Brendan O'Leary, developer advocate at GitLab. We wrote about it up on DevOps.com. GitLab released a major release, as they do every month, right? The 22nd of every month. But this month's was even a bigger release, right? And Brendan talks to us. It just contained some major upgrades around CI/CD and more. So Brendan is going to give us a view into that. Then I was really happy to speak to a new company, Bolster AI. These folks are using AI power, ML, to help against phishing and counterfeit websites. By not just educating your staff, which is what many of the phishing companies do, but by really, proactively detecting these phishing and counterfeit sites and doing something to block them. So we spoke to Jason Alafghani, who's with Bolster AI, and Jason will give us the lowdown there. And then beginning to play our sessions from TechStrong Con. Yesterday, as sort of a tease for the conference, we replayed Emmett Keefe of Insight Partners, his keynote in its entirety, and then gave you a couple 2-3 minute kind of promos for some of the other speakers. I think the first thing we're going to do is replay all of the keynotes here on TechStrong TV. So we did Emmett's yesterday. Today, I am going to bring you Andrew Clay Schaefer, VP at Red Hat. And Andrew, of course, is recently a Red Hat. He's a founder of Puppet, Pivotal. Andrew is probably one of the progenitors of the DevOps movement, really, and always has something to say. But Andrew Clay Schaefer is a human, like you are, like I am, and everything that's been going on in our world for the last 3.5 months has had a profound impact on him. And he wrote to us about a week ago and said, guys, I was going to talk about DevOps and transformation, but I feel like if I'm going to talk, I need it to be about what I can do. And we said, Andrew, do what you feel. And he delivered, it's about 47 or 50 minutes, a presentation on what can I do. And it talks about current events and how it affects him, how it affects you, how it affects us, how it affects humans. And I think you're going to find it interesting. And so that we're going to play that in its entirety today for you. And so that's Andrew Schaefer. And then after that, I'll be back with the news. We have Charlene O'Hanlon, who has Dan Garcia over at manager of cyber risk and architecture at Datto. We have an analyst corner with Mitchell Ashley, and a channel roundup from one and only Mike Vizard. and then I'll be back to wrap it up. So thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. And we will be right back after this commercial with Mark Herring from InfluxDB.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, it is important to protect yourself and others from spreading the virus. Prevention and personal safety is key. Here are the top ways you can protect yourself and others. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Avoid touching your face. Practice social distancing and avoid high-risk potential people. If you are showing symptoms, stay at home. If you must go out, wear a face mask. Always cover coughs and sneezes with a tissue or use the inside of your elbow. Clean and sanitize frequently touched surfaces daily. Together, we can prevent this pandemic.
Alrighty, as I mentioned, this may well in fact be Mark Herring's final interview as CMO at InfluxDB. We've spoken to Mark a few times here. Let's hear what he has to say.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for this session on TechStrong TV. My guest today is Mark Herring. Of course, Mark is with the InfluxDB, Influx Data team. Excuse me. Hey Mark, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Hey Alan, great to be back.
You know, you have the same background as last time.
I know, I haven't moved. It's still my same old house. Yeah, I wish it was.
You're not moving, but go ahead. It's not a real one.
It's definitely not a real one, but I'm a real person. They haven't replaced me with animatronics yet. I think that's coming next.
We're going to take your word for that because I don't have any way of proving or disproving it. But
I mean, the whole Turing test, so yeah.
Yeah, but what's interesting is, when did I interview you last? It had to be 3 weeks ago?
Yeah, at least. Exactly. We were talking sort of about a developer survey that we've done just as we entered these joys of COVID times. But, hey, we're deep in that now.
Yes, we are. We are. And, we were talking off camera about it. But you know what, Mark? So this is your standard background. It's your normal.
It's my new normal. Yeah, exactly.
It's your new normal. This is your office, your pictures in your office. It takes the place. But, the whole world, especially here in tech, we've had now 2.5 plus months to kind of settle into patterns. Whether you want to call it new normal or not, I don't really care. That's what for people to decide. But there's certainly patterns and trends that we're settling into. Here at MediaOps, I was telling you off camera, we're actually, we're going to take a long holiday weekend here. And then when we come back, we're in sustainable mode at this point, where I think for the last 2.5 months, like many organizations, we were in fire mode, right? Hair on fire mode, just, dealing with so much difference and so much newness and change and uncertainty and fear and everything else. And I think now that's an impossible level to sustain, number one. And you don't always make the best decisions when you have that kind of gun to your head, right? Fight or flight. Where now we do have patterns that have been established. We have norms and trends that we're seeing, and we know what kind of works and doesn't work. So let's talk about, what are you guys seeing? Are you seeing patterns and norms and trends being established in your customer base and what people are doing?
Absolutely. And so, what I'd say we've seen is, when we were all sent home and sort of we started worrying about the virus, as I say, what we saw, I think from everyone, our customers included, was a little bit of panic in terms of what are we going to do, and let's put everything on hold and think about it. And I'd say what's emerged is what I'd almost classify as operational excellence, right? How do we look at our stuff again? How do we rethink this? It's given us a time to pause on it, and now we can double down. And so what we've seen is that people that took the pause button are now sort of doubling down on some of their purchases with us. I see it a lot in sort of what you'd expect in the gaming industry, of looking at how do we get better insights into into these massive multiplayer games and make sure that they're always up, streaming services, and sort of I'd sort of say what you'd say is the classic, services that we've seen taken off in these COVID times. But I think we also just seen just sort of general customers out there looking at what they've been doing and going, okay, well, consolidation is important. How do I engineer costs out of the system? But I'm worried about this operational excellence. And so I think there's that. And we see a lot of people just worried about their people, right? I mean, but we talked a little bit about, off camera, going, people are just working harder and they're feeling that this is going to work hard like a little, hamster on a hamster wheel. And it's like, no, let's take a breath back, doing a great job on these things. How do we make, how do we adopt this new way of working, this new way of thinking is, whether you call it the new normal or not, but this is normal now. This we need to just adopt this, and and we can get through this.
I agree. We're going to get through it because we don't have a choice, right?
Exactly, you got to get through it. Yeah.
You're going to get through it. Mark, so one of the things, and I've thought about this both, in terms of our own team here as well as the world at large and the tech industry, in particular, of, okay, so you understand these are our new trends and this is what we're doing, right? And maybe this lasts through the summer, into the fall, maybe even, closer to Christmas and New Year's. Longer term, and it's hard to say longer term, but longer term, how much of that is lasting? I'll give you, for instance, I saw a headline today that Zuckerberg on Facebook says that half of Facebook's employees will be working from home by, I forgot what the date is, but in the near term future, permanently, not just during this new normal phase, but permanently. How much of it sticks like that? I mean, that's an obvious one, but how much of it sticks?
So I think some of it's going to definitely stick, because I think what this has forced people to do is, it's not like you were reading about some other company that decided to have a remote workforce, right? If I just look at InfluxDB, we've had primarily, most of our engineers have always worked from home. We designed the company that way, but we're a tiny company, right? We have 200 employees, and so we built it that way. And so you look at these larger companies that are now being forced to do this, and I think management and even just sort of the whole employee base have got more comfortable with it. But I think it's also changed the way that we've learned to communicate. And so, in some ways, I feel it's a little bit like, if you think of typing as maybe an example, is, it's learning how to touch type. It's a whole new set of muscles, but when you get good at it, you can type a lot faster than two-finger typing, right? And I think it's almost if we can adopt some of these new ways of communicating, I say to my team, we need to think about everything just being asynchronous communication and not synchronous. It's like, I can't expect you to be there. It's not like you sitting right across from me. And so even if I see on Slack that you're there and I go, hey, what's going on? You might not be available at that particular time. And I've got to think, okay, let me, rather than instead of going, hi, Alan, can you get back to me? I just go say, Alan, when you got some time, here's a question I've got for you. You've got to just be a little more patient waiting for that. And so I think communication styles will change quite a lot because of this. I think us having to write things down a lot more so that people can read it post, the time. And we've seen this with a remote workforce, before, COVID. It's like you don't know what people's time zones are. And so you've got to do a lot more. But I think there'll be additional tools that come along. Obviously, developers are very comfortable with this in sort of the advent of GitHub and all the rest of just going shared code on a cloud service. But we're going to get better at all of those things. And so I think in order to enable sort of the Facebook vision of going, hey, 50% of the employees, I don't know if that'll be true across the whole industry. I mean, I think, Facebook is, a relatively, progressive company. I mean, seen similar, arguments from Google, and then seen Apple going, no, it's going to be a different work environment, but we expect people back in the office. So I think there's going to be different varieties, but I don't think it'll be back to what we knew before, where, most design patterns were around working in an office. I think that will change, but I think it's going to create a whole new set of opportunities around communication and tools that help that, right? It's, I I think you've been through these things before. We do brainstorming, you put posters up on the wall. And I go, there's great tools now that do it, electronically and
digitally.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's what's going to change. People are going to say, oh, I don't need to do that anymore. Why don't we use this tool, even if I'm in the office? So I think communications, the way we communicate, will change radically as a result of this, whatever long take this year that we haven't just forced learned to do it.
Agreed. I think there are patterns, anti-patterns, but it's very hard you don't turn back time. I think as someone once sang in a song. But
if you could turn back time, that would be fun.
Exactly.
Anyway.
Let me bring another point out to you, and that's this, though. All of this is great, assuming you have customers who want to buy and use your product, right? And I think the real question is going to be, right, what we're going to do is, as an industry, and what we're going to do with our teams and everything, is also heavily dependent on how quickly the economy. I don't think it's a V and it just goes back like Groundhog Day to February 20th or something. That's not going to happen. But how long is a recovery here? How long? How deep is the trowel? Is it? It'll be a lumpy recovery, geography-wise and industry-wise and so forth. And, that's got to have an effect. I've spoken to several CEOs and tech executives who said, hey, look, we took a hit. We've taken a hit. We definitely see a hit. And, we've got to work hard to bring it back. But on the other hand, especially companies that facilitate digital transformation, right?
That are involved in this
cloud native digital transformation, DevOps, etc. They're expecting that as this economy starts coming back, and it doesn't have to rocket, but as it starts coming back, there's going to be just a major chunk of companies, of organizations who were not on board with cloud transformation before this, but now will be full steam ahead on it. That's going to be a huge imperative. And that will actually wind up building their companies.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth there. I mean, we've been through major sort of changes, not from a pandemic perspective, but if you just look at, proprietary operating systems to Linux or, closed source to open source. And so we've seen these major technological paradigm shifts. And I think what we're going to see, sort of in sort of parallels is that people are going to be looking at, how do I get, I think, like you were saying, I think more and more adoption onto the cloud. How am I going to push things to the cloud? How am I going to not have to own my own infrastructure? How am I going to actually try and engineer some of the costs out my system where maybe, we sort of, so what we see internally is a huge adoption in our open source technology. Because it's, wow, I can get started and it starts for free. And then if I really need it, I'm going to use it. And so, this whole like re-engineering and taking some of the costs out because, that you're trying to support the obviously the overarching business. And so that business has got to go through some form of digital transformation because, I think what this is caused is a lot more, and I think it will still continue is, hey, why do I need to go into the store? Why can't I just do curbside pickup? Or why can't they just ship it to me? And I think some of these sea changes, were in the works, but I don't think shopping malls will go back to the way it was before. I think, we as buyers have changed our habits. And I think there's got to be the same adoption or change in the industries that we support to go and say, how are you changing to be more of a digital company? You even just look, I'm in California here, and so we have these different phases of, we're in stage 2 now, which means, hey, as long as you can order online, you can pick up at the storefront. But you're looking for most restaurants and even some of the clothing companies, they never had the ability to order online, right? They've been retooling like that, like mad, right? And I go, it's going to spawn a whole new set of technology, and I think a whole new set of companies that adopt that. And it's going to be like the horse buggies. People that don't adopt that yet will move to the wayside. But that's normal evolution in our business, right?
Yeah, no, it's normal evolution in our world.
Mhm.
Right? There's a
Absolutely.
reason we don't see horse and buggies down the street
Exactly.
anymore.
And, I hope one day it's all, we feel the same way about gasoline-powered engines, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, well, I mean, but that's a great point because, I mean, who would have guessed that, the glut in that market just because we don't drive around as much, right? I mean, I think there's a whole macro, and I'm definitely not an expert on macroeconomics, but I just go, man, what happens if people all started working from home? Would we need to live close to the city? Could we all go live in more of a rural setting? What does that do to housing
Well, I
prices?
think
And just
that's a trend, though. You know,
Yeah,
Mark,
trend,
we're
yeah.
seeing that. I live in South Florida.
And we're seeing a lot of people moving down from New York, or there's always people moving down from
New York here.
Sure.
But more
Yeah.
so than normal because it's less dense here.
it's a less cost of living, and so you're getting a lot of people coming down. But here's another sort of little unintended thing. Maybe I don't know if you're aware of. I used to do my DevOps. I still do my DevOps chat podcast, right? And we had a nice following. You might have been on my podcast, and we've done 300 episodes of them. Not just all podcasts are down something like 30 or 35% in listeners because people predominantly listen to them, we found out, in their car on the way to the office.
Commuting, yeah, absolutely.
So if you're not driving or commuting to the office, you're not listening to as many podcasts.
Correct.
Where video consumption like this is up, right? We get 8,000 plus people a day watching this now. And it's from 0 2.5 months ago.
So
Well, I think, I totally agree, and it's just, I think it's also just the bite size of content is also, the consumption of content. I think is becoming more and more bite size as opposed to, a whole meal. It's like, okay, I only have 5 minutes to go and look at this. And so what we're seeing from a marketing side of the world is consumption of sort of little vignettes of how to do something in 2 minute explainers is way up, whereas our sort of spend 60 minutes and watch a training is going down because it's like, oh, I just want to just consume little vignettes of things, right?
Yeah. Well, that's been going on with reading articles too for a long time, I'll tell
For
you.
sure.
When we do heat maps of what where their eyes are on our articles, they read the first paragraph and a half, they read the last line or two, they skim the rest. And that is what it is, right? It's a shame.
But I think, if you just look just at that trend and you look at heat maps, you're going to say, well, there's a whole set of, adjacent technologies that got created to go and look at that. Looking at the heat maps, where do people, engage in your video? And I just go, this is what to me is exciting, is just going, I think we'll see as a result of this, just a spawning of a whole new set of technologies going and saying, I can answer that question for you. I can engage with this audience a little bit better with you. Because, our behavior of us as a society are changing. And for me, I just sort of a technology provider, I go, hey, how do I adopt to be able to meet some of those new needs that are going to become, the needs I need to go and adopt to? And as a marketeer, I think it's always exciting times to go and say, oh, my audience, the way they're consuming this stuff is changing. How can I out-innovate some of my competitors to be ahead of them, right? That's that's sort of the fun part of the game, right?
Agreed. Man, you know what? It's interesting times, Mark. We'll have to see how this plays
It
out.
is.
Absolutely.
Definitely interesting.
Yep. Hey, we're almost out of time, but I did want to ask, anything else happening at Influx you want to mention?
I mean, what I'd say is, what I started with is, what we've seen from, so again, just we're a, time series database, we really worry about time and tracking time. What we've sort of seen majority is, people adopting more and more cloud. So, hey, we have a cloud service that's just, on fire at the moment. And our open source technology is going through. And so, I guess for sort of the DevOps and sort of audience out there, it's, there's a lot of cool tooling out there. And I'd sort of say, hey, just go spend your time poking around, where it all is, because that's where you live. But, we're all trying to just, again, hear what the needs out there. And, we're hearing a lot about sort of GitOps. I'm sure you're hearing the same thing. And I'm interested really to see where that trend goes. So, say from my side of the world, communicate with us, collaborate with us on your favorite platform, whether that be Twitter or be Stack Overflow or GitHub. And, we'll get all through this together and have a lot of fun doing it.
Fantastic. All right, man. We're gonna end it. Hey, have a great weekend. I'll be in touch. Mark
Awesome. Enjoy
Herring.
the 4 days. Yeah.
Thank you. Mark Herring, InfluxDB, Influx Data here on TechStrong TV. This is Alan Schimmel. We're going to be right back with our next guest.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Our next interview is with Brendan O'Leary, senior developer advocate at GitLab. And the 22nd of every month is Magic Day at GitLab. They do a release, hell or high water. Oftentimes these releases have 180 to 200 new features and so forth. This month's was a really special one. I think it's GitLab 13.0. It's a major release for GitLab. Significant upgrades to their CI/CD systems and functionality. I'm going to let Brendan tell you about it, but this is real big news. So let's go to Brendan O'Leary at GitLab.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, back here for another great interview. I'm happy to be joined by my friend Brendan O'Leary, Senior Developer Evangelist at GitLab. Brendan, how are you, man?
Doing okay, Alan, just got a new office, so I feel like it's kind of like I've been outside in the sense that I've moved where I'm situated at home, so doing good.
But you still got that GitLab background going on, so it's hard for us to share the new office with you, man.
Now, to be fair, it's because there's still a kid's play kitchen behind me, and I figured that wasn't the best for the interview. But who knows? Maybe I could work.
I used to like my Susie Big kitchen oven. Those little. My little sister used to make these. They didn't taste really good, but anything with chocolate is good, man. Anyway, Brendan, it's another month, and that means another GitLab release. But this month's release is a big one, right?
Yeah. So May, the beauty of May 22nd is it's our major release day. So we released GitLab 13.0 on this past 22nd. And we're really excited about a lot of the major improvements that came with it.
So first, let's get to high level. How many new features, improvements in this major release?
Well, that's hard to quantify. I mean, there's dozens, to put it mildly. So of course, we've got ones that we like to highlight on our blog, and that can be, typically around a couple dozen. But then there's always, every month we also have lots of fixes and new, smaller.
And they usually run 180, 200.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit over that, right? Because everyone gets excited for it being a major release. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think the number was more like 210 or something like that. I know it was a little bit higher. I actually just saw that number earlier. But the thing I'm excited about is there's a lot of really major big steps forward. Of course, again, being a major release, it gives you that opportunity to take a big jump. And so I'm really excited about those, but it's, there's always value getting added in, always, open source contributors adding value in, so.
Sure. All right, let's hit the big ones, Brendan.
Sure, well, I think the thing, some of the stuff we're most excited about is what we're doing around security. So as you know, security is a big deal for everyone developing applications, and it's something that we've had a big focus on for some time. And we want to make sure that you're bringing security to the developer where they can actually take action on it, right? We want them to understand how they might be impacting application security when they're making the change, because it's much easier to make an informed decision then rather than at the very end of the cycle. And so we've brought a lot of improvements there. We've brought additional static analysis for additional languages like .NET, which is exciting, but actually the most exciting part of this is an integration piece. So, of course, GitLab has a bunch of great security scanning built in. We believe, very strongly in the single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle. But in this release, we're also bringing in the ability to integrate security tools you may have directly into that same place. So the beauty of how we've always built these kinds of things is it's built on small primitives that can then be reused. So now we've got first-class support for external security scanning tools that you might already own if you want to bring that into GitLab and have it right next to the GitLab security results. And so that's great for folks who might want to say, yeah, I've got this tool, I've already invested all this money, I'd like to run them side by side for a while, or maybe I want both, right, the results to get more clarity. It gives you a lot of options when it comes to that. So that's one real big change that I'm excited about. Yeah. And
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go. You know.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, the other thing I'm really, really pretty excited about is a lot of, deep integrations with HashiCorp products. So, it's no surprise to anyone that HashiCorp has an amazing set of products that are really valuable. So we're bringing additional integration with Vault for secrets management in this release. Yeah, and we're really excited about that. The ability for your GitLab runner that's running the deploy job to authenticate through Vault so that you can get, just temporary, maybe it's 10-minute access credentials to do the deploy to production instead of having, long living credentials in some sort of machine that's doing the deploys. And it also brings first-class support for Terraform. So you can use GitLab, right? GitLab's great at source control and managing change. And so now you can use GitLab to manage Terraform state and display, outputs of the Terraform plan directly in the merge request. So for folks that are using Terraform or Vault or other, HashiCorp tools, there's a lot of great first-class integration support coming as well.
Excellent, man. Excellent. I've seen some buzz on the street around the CI/CD capabilities, independent of security and stuff. What do you got for us in there? What goodies?
Yeah. There's a lot of great stuff in there. So, of course, CI/CD is a broad term, and we've had best-in-class CI, right? This continuous integration, the concept of being able to run your builds. We've had that for a while. On the CD side, we're bringing a lot more, right? So one is that Terraform, right? That brings some CD capabilities. But a lot of the other features we're bringing is around requirements and release management. So the ability to kind of understand and trace from your requirements through the entire value stream to the release and tracing those artifacts is really valuable. And then the other thing that comes with that is, nowadays CD may come, right? You may have continuous deployment to your production environment, but folks are going beyond that with things like progressive delivery, right? So progressive delivery is the idea that we're decoupling the delivery of the feature from the delivery of the code in the sense that we might have a feature flag in place and that code is already in production ready to be run, but we want to turn it on for a test group, or we want to turn it on and be able to turn it off if it has a reaction in production we didn't expect. So we've brought a lot of updates to our feature flag capabilities to enable progressive delivery, ability to dynamically toggle them based on what impact we're actually seeing in the monitoring of production. So we can say, hey, we think this is going to have a positive impact on memory usage or conversions. And if it doesn't, then turn that feature flag off automatically for us, right? Because if it's not having our intended impact, we want to just let the system say, hey, this isn't having the impact, turn it off and let us know so that we can go back to the drawing board. And A/B testing based on feature flag so that you can really understand how those features are used by your user and if they're having, again, the intended impact of the change. So I'm really excited about that, right? That's kind of on the CD side. And I would say beyond CD in the sense of progressive delivery is this concept, that goes beyond CD.
That is. It's, what boggles me, quite frankly? So every month, we never miss a release. Not we, you, right? GitLab.
Yeah.
You guys never miss a release. And as I said, we tossed around 180, 200 new features, changes a month. Now we've got this major release, right? 13. Lucky 13. And, back when I was, founding companies, software, a major release, we'd focus in on an area maybe and really polish up, the killer feature for this release was, boom. Here, you've given us really 2-3 really big security, DevSecOps security type of functionality, integrations into things like Vault and Terraform. And now, just a ton of CI/CD kind of stuff, all in one release. It's. I mean, you think about it, Brendan. It's amazing stuff, right?
It really is. I mean, I used to run, engineering teams too, and if I went back to the Brendan of 5-10 years ago, he wouldn't believe it either. It's incredibly freeing. It sounds so simple, but it's not. Not missing that release day, right? This 22nd is a sacrosanct day around GitLab. It's like, it's the 22nd. And not missing that day just does something to your velocity that's really impressive. It means that you're going to release that day no matter what. And so maybe something doesn't make it, right? Maybe something doesn't get through quality control, or it isn't quite where you want it to be. It's easier to let that go because well, that's okay. It'll be a month, right? The maximum amount of time until we're able to release it again.
Another month.
Right.
That's
really freeing. It lets you move faster, right? It lets you slow down to speed up, that we all say a lot. It really lets you do that because you can, you have this confidence in your ability to continue to ship. Versus I was in the same boat as you. It's like when I was going through, I used to work for a medical software company, and of course, versioning really matters in medicine. And when we come to a major release, we'd have to really focus in and say, okay, what's the big thing that we're going to say is the thing here? And while that's true for GitLab, like I said, I think there's still that, right? A lot of us have been at other software companies. For many of the engineers at GitLab, it's another release, right? Like it just happens to increment a number in their mind, and they're continuing to deliver that. I know that's true of the community, right? So the other huge leverage point we have is being based on an open core, right? And we're actually moving more and more things down that we've put originally into the proprietary code into the open core software. So for instance, with 13.0, what we call design management, which is the ability to do version control on image and other sorts of assets like that, we moved that from our paid tier into the core open source platform, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? A lot of companies don't do that when it comes to open sourcing things, but we're really believe in what we call buyer-based open core, which is, that's how we base where things are going to go is based on the buyer. And the buyer for that kind of design management, well, that's going to be the designers, right? That's going to be the individual contributors that need that feature. We want to build valuable things for their bosses and their boss's boss on top that, is what folks can pay for. But having that in open source means now the whole open source community can contribute to it. That will be better. Design management will be better in 3, 4, 6 months than we would have ever been able to make it just with our engineers at GitLab. And that's the exciting thing.
Yep. And on this notion of the 22nd hell or high water, COVID or no COVID, right? Quarantine, lockdown, shelter in place, it still hasn't stopped that train from, like the postman, rain, sleet, snow, nor hail, whatever. We may not have a post office in 3 months.
Exactly. Well, when there's a whole team of folks responsible for the build and release and process and all that, and so there's always someone if somebody can't make it happen, right? It's not like, again, in many places you'd say, well, let's just push the release a week because Alan can't be there, right? Or Brendan has got his kids at home, so he's not going to be able to do the release. It's like, nope, that's not it's not possible. Like this just doesn't work. Like someone else has to step up to the plate and make whatever has to happen if someone's not available. In fact, like if the 22nd is on a weekend, of course, those folks adjust their schedules so that they're not working too much because they're going to have to work on the weekend. And I know I'll just be like probably just walking around the neighborhood with my family if it's a weekend, and I'll like start getting some buzz on Twitter or something. I'll go, oh yeah, it's the 22nd, right? Like I just know.
And that's
I
what happens.
forgot that Saturday was the 22nd or whatever it is. Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, man, that's great. For people, they could go to the GitLab blog to get kind of the highlights of Release 13.
Yeah, we do a great blog post. There's a huge effort from our whole product management and engineering and technical writing teams every month to get a really focus on trying to make the blog post really valuable for folks. So if you just Google GitLab 13.0, probably the first result will be the blog post. That'll have screenshots and videos and like details on all of these things. That's where we celebrate an MVP from the most valuable person from the open source community every month. So you can see there's a thing called version snippets, which is just snippets of code now can be versioned in GitLab. Well, that came from an open source contributor. So we're really excited about that. And yeah, you can find all that on the blog.
Cool. Hey, Brendan, thanks for joining us. We'll invite you back for next June 22nd.
Anytime.
And we'll talk about it then. Hey, man.
Penciled in.
Alrighty.
It's not penciled in, it's penned in.
Got it. Penned in. Hey, my friend Brendan O'Leary, pretty in pink today, right? On Wednesday.
Yes.
From GitLab here, talking about GitLab Release 13 on the 22nd of May. Major upgrade across the board at the GitLab platform. Brendan, we'll see you next month then, man. Take care and have a great day.
Thanks, Alan.
All right. This is Alan Schimmel. We're going to be right back with our next guest here on TechStrong TV.
ContainerJournal.com is the leading online destination for centralized computing-related content. ContainerJournal.com covers all aspects of software containers, from container management, data management for containers, container security, networking for containers, to the entire container ecosystem, Kubernetes, microservices, serverless, and more. ContainerJournal.com has the largest selection of container-related news, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.containerjournal.com to learn more. ContainerJournal.com is operated by MediaOps Inc., the team behind DevOps.com, Digital Anarchist, SecurityBoulevard.com, DevOps Connect, and DevOpsDozen.com.
Phishing and counterfeit websites are up like never before. There's something like 100,000 sites that were registered with a COVID theme that are probably a little suspect at this point. Phishing is an all-time high. A company called Bolster AI is trying to stop that using AI and machine learning technology to stop zero-day phishing and counterfeit websites, helping with detection. I caught up with Jason Alafghani from Bolster AI, and this is what Jason had to say.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey everyone, it's Alan Schimmel here on TechStrong TV. Our next guest is Jason Alafghani, who is with Bolster, and I hope I got that right. Jason, welcome to TechStrong TV.
Thank you. It's good to be here. As Alan said, my name is Jason from Bolster AI.
Okay, and that's the website. Let's get that out of the way, right? It's bolster.ai for people who want more information.
Exactly, yeah.
Very cool. So Jason, I don't think we've ever had anyone from Bolster on, or certainly on TechStrong TV, but I don't think we've had them on our like Security Boulevard, DevOps, or what have you. Why don't you give people a little background about who Bolster is, what you guys do?
Sure. So fundamentally, we are an online fraud prevention company. We have, looked across the internet and figured out that a lot of the fraud has been caused as a result of account takeovers. And the number one leading cause of account takeovers is phishing. So that's sort of where all of our attention is how can we effectively stop online phishing?
Excellent. This phishing is something I've been following for years and years and years. And unfortunately, with this COVID-19 thing, it seems like it's gotten worse instead of better, which kind of stinks, right? But when you have bad actors in the world, there's bad actors in the world. Jason, let's talk a little bit about, you guys do a sort of a quarterly and then a year-end report on kind of the state of phishing. Is that fair?
Yes, yeah, and we recently released just this week our Q1 2020 report. Okay,
and I haven't read the report, in all honesty, full disclosure, so I'm going to count on you to kind of tell us about it. But I got to imagine that this whole COVID thing probably became like a center of gravity time warp for what we're seeing. True?
Absolutely. I mean, if you've seen phishing, you've watched phishing over the years, the scammers and the hackers are always looking for the latest lure, right? They're always looking for the latest trend to sort of capitalize on. COVID was, just the next best thing. And we saw just a historic explosion of phishing, specifically around this COVID topic.
Yeah, I get it. So share with us, give us, let's do this. Let's take a look. Whenever we're talking about, surveys and reports like this, I always like to say, what are the big 3 takeaways? Because it's hard for people to wrap their head around 7 or 10 things. What are the big 3 takeaways people need to take out of this report?
Sure. So I think the first big thing is that we had a huge Q1 surge in phishing, but 30% of it was attributed to COVID. So typically what you have is, the sort of the big value industries are targeted, right? Your bank accounts, your online e-commerce accounts, your telecom account. But in this case, for this last quarter, there was just an explosion of phishing around COVID. The second biggest thing I would say is that the phishing really seemed to follow the patterns of work from home. So right as all the shelter-in-place orders were coming down in the United States, and more people were at home working from home, we saw COVID spike to about 25,000 new pages a day. So that was a record for the quarter and something that we've never, frankly, seen around any one topic before. And then the third thing I would say is we saw an unbelievable amount of coverage, or I guess scamming or misinformation around cures. Typically, phishing and fraud try to take credentials away from you, but in this case, they were trying to give you some misinformation around particular drugs or supplies.
Yep, and a starving man in the desert will turn down no hamburger, right? And,
exactly.
And I think there's kind of that going on there. Obviously the aim of phishing is to get these people to click through to a website where they can install some sort of Trojan or some sort of, bot on your computer, and then have access to sensitive information, or use your computer, to get elsewhere on the network for sensitive information or what have you. Is that the same with the COVID related stuff?
So we've actually seen malware decline over the last year, but especially into COVID. The sort of hot ticket item nowadays is just phishing. How do we clone a site, get you to log into that site thinking it's the real site? And then we use that to drain your bank account. We use that to change your password on your personal email, to take over, your entire life. Or, perhaps a breach into a business, right? Take over an employee's account and get access to a company's sensitive data.
So for individuals where they're taking over your email or something like that, is it then become sort of a ransomware thing where they want money to release it, or what are they looking to do?
There's a mixed bag, but generally what happens is there are a few people in the chain of phishing. There are the people that create the phishing kits that then sell them on the dark web. Then there are people that actually deploy the phishing kits to begin harvesting your information. But then they often don't really use these passwords and accounts. They'll often go on the dark web and resell your account. And then it's up to the world of the underworld, I should say, to decide what happens with your credentials.
I just went through an identity theft thing myself. Just this past week, I've been dealing with it.
Oh, no.
Interestingly, I don't think they had my passwords, but they had account numbers and zip code. And for two of my credit cards, if you call them with your account number and you know your zip code on the automated system, they'll let you in to change addresses, phone number. Luckily, I have a monitoring service I use, and I got alerted right away, and I was able to pop in and close them and lock it down before anything happened. But I had to go lock all my files, right? I've changed all my passwords now, even though as I said, I don't know if they had my password because they didn't do this through the web. It was done on a phone. And, but still, it's a pain in the ass, number one, but it's really scary.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that you're going through this. That's really unfortunate, but it's awesome that you had that monitoring service set up. I think so many people don't take that, very smart first foundational step, and then they're, this problem is far harder to deal with 3 months down the line after they've already changed all your passwords.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and getting that done, and oh man, it's a whole thing. I'm going to write up a blog about it at some point. But so give us a sense of universe before and after the, what influence COVID is having. Like what percentage of these phishings and everything else are coming out of COVID?
Yeah. So this past quarter, we saw about 30% of fraudulent phishing sites be in some way COVID related. So what's very interesting is the scammers seem to be relatively constant, right? They're always looking for a new page to put up, but they're just looking for that quarter's, that month's, that week's excitement to be able to
never waste a good crisis, right?
Exactly. So these people, everyone who's making these code-related sites may have very well been making banking sites just a month prior, but the massive spike in remote workforce has really led to an explosion in new kinds of phishing.
Excellent. Let's put COVID aside for a moment. What other kind of insight in the report are you getting from non-COVID kind of old school phishing, if you will?
Sure. So I do think that this remote workforce thing is, it's not exactly, there's a spike in remote workforce, users as a result of COVID, but I do think it's somewhat separate because it's a trend that we're seeing, across the board. More and more people are working from home. And as a result, that entire industry of software, right, the collaboration software, the video conferencing software, et cetera, has fast-tracked to the number one most phished industry. Typically, we see finance, we see retail, but this time we saw SaaS and this sort of remote workforce technology jump up. So what we're very interested to see is, does this trend hold into the next quarter and the quarter after and the years after? So is the SaaS industry phishing here to stay, or is it simply a recent phenomenon?
Well, from what we see from we talk to 4, 5, 6 companies a day, and here on TechStrong TV, I think working from home is something that's here to stay. I don't know if people are ever going to go back full time, or some people will, obviously, but I think the amount of people who work at least part-time, 2-3 days a week from home is going to remain pretty high as a result of this. I think people are really realizing, again, it's industry specific, right? But if you are some services worker who works primarily on their computer, chances are you may not be going back to your office full time after this.
We can definitely see a world like that. And if that's the case, the scammers go where the people are. So if the people are staying remote, I imagine the scammers will stay in that space as well.
Absolutely. So, reports are great. What advice can we give people? What can we do to help?
So, I think the advice ranges depending on whether it's in your personal capacity or in your in your work capacity, right? So in personal, I mean, it's very important to follow a lot of the usual tips. Don't reuse passwords. Be extra vigilant when logging into, your Netflix, when logging into your email. Make sure that the URLs are what they say they are and what you expect. Make sure that you see that little lock in the corner. All these things are very important for the personal. And what's very interesting is sometimes the URLs can be hard to tell. Sometimes they might do netflix.something.com and it looks legitimate, but it's fake. So what you can also do is take these URLs that are particularly suspicious and go online. We have a free online tool called Checkfish, checkfish.ai. So anybody can pop in any URL you want, and it'll immediately, in real time, so within seconds, it's going to tell you whether or not that site's phishing. And it looks at all the content of the site, it looks at the infrastructure that it sits on, et cetera. But I think that the answer is, is different, but very interesting for in the work capacity. There's a lot more that people can do, right? Because organizations have security departments and things like that. So I think it's very important for organizations to make sure that in this remote workforce world, they are extra focused on that they're extra focused on awareness, right? So people have been used to working at home in their offices and used to a lot of the usual processes. But now that there are new processes, there are new login screens, new sites to go to, and that right there, that confusion can lead to bad things for your business. So make sure to put awareness front and center in this new sort of more digital remote world. I think it's very important as well.
Excellent, man. So this Q1 report will be interesting to see how big the COVID is in Q2, or they move on to whatever the next hot thing is. So I don't know if COVID's actually going away that quick, to tell you the truth. Jason, just a couple other things. I want to repeat that place where people can go check. Is it Checkfish? So it's CHECKPHISH.
Exactly.
.ai, right?
Exactly.
Fish is in fishing, not fish is in the thing you eat. Okay, so checkfish.ai. And then the report itself is available on the main site.
Yep, it is at bolster.ai/reports is the easiest way you can go to see all of our reports, but the one front and center is the Q1 2020 report.
Very cool, man. Hey, I want to thank you for joining us today on TechStrong TV. Thanks for the research and the report. I think people, forewarned is forearmed, and this kind of information can really, bring it home for people. Keep up the great work. Maybe we'll check back for your Q2 report.
Awesome. Thank you for having me. Much appreciated.
All right. Let me make sure I don't mess up your name here. Jason Alafghani.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Perfect.
Man, I got it. Bolster. Also, checkfish.ai. Great site to go, a good resource to go make sure any sites you're going to are legitimate. Hey, man, thanks very much. This is Alan Schimmel for TechStrong TV. We'll be right back with our next guest.
So as I said in my opening, Andrew Schaefer came to us about a week and a half ago and said, or maybe a week ago, and said, I was going to talk about DevOps, but if I'm going to talk, I want to talk about what I can do regarding the situation going on in our streets, in our homes, in our country, in our world. And we green-lighted that and said, Andrew, please talk from your heart. And this is Andrew Schaefer, human, about what he can do, what we can all do.
I guess we're going to do this. When I first signed up for this, I imagined I would probably be speaking about transformation or some quasi-technical DevOps related topic. And I knew I'd be remote and recorded, but with COVID, obviously, I didn't realize there would be so much going on by now, and as a consequence of that, I'm going to talk about something else. So you may not like this talk, but if you want to see me talk about those other things, there's other videos online. And if you Google Andrew Schaefer, there is no talent shortage, or DevOps progressions, or open transformation, then there's a few hours of videos that you might find amusing. I might not be qualified to give this talk. I probably wasn't qualified to give those other talks either, but I gave them, and people keep asking me to talk. So this may not be what you want to hear today, but this is really the only topic I can kind of bring myself to talk about. And I'll probably make mistakes in the way that I frame or think or articulate some of this. I'll say it wrong, but I can't say nothing. And I will continue to educate myself, and I won't pretend to always do the best in this regard, but I definitely think about what it takes to learn, and a lot of the themes and some of these other topics are about learning as an individual and learning as an organization. And all I can do is take the information that I get and try to synthesize it and make sense of it. And really that's my whole career is essentially trying to say words that make sense to me and hoping they make sense to other people. So with that being said, just to kind of get right to the point, and there's a bit more, but I just want to say Black Lives Matter. And that's if I was in a room full of people and getting that interaction, then I might suggest that we all say that out loud together, but we're not, and I'll just say it by myself in a room far removed from any of the real issues or protests. I mean, I live pretty far from an urban center, close to the Mexican border, and I'm in a place that's essentially got space and food, and I'm not faced with this, but I just can't stop thinking about what's happening and other people that I know and what they're experiencing. And so I'm going to try to, like I said, synthesize some of my thoughts and my understanding about what this means, and hopefully it'll be informative and interesting, thought provocative. But if it isn't, I still can't talk about anything else. So if you do not care to listen to me, I understand. If you do not care, I do not understand. I really don't understand how people can see what's going on. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about is what's gone on before, how we got to this point. And if you don't think this matters, or you don't understand why it matters, then I'm sorry, but maybe this will help. I swore to never be silent whenever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. We must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence the tormentor, never the tormented. Those aren't my words. That's a Nobel Peace Prize winning Holocaust survivor talking about why it's important in the framing for never not taking sides. We always must take sides. This is a similar sentiment expressed from someone who was part of and experienced apartheid in South Africa. So some similar patterns. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you've chosen the side of the oppressor. Desmond Tutu. Wise words. So let's look at some patterns. We'll talk about some systems. We'll talk about politics a bit. And I keep hearing this from number of interesting places that, oh, we should not have politics and technology, and we should keep these things separate, keep politics out of technology. And to those people who want to keep politics out of tech, that is literally impossible. There is no technology that is not political. There's no human action that's not political. And whenever anyone is saying keep politics out of this, what they really always mean is do not try to change this. And maybe I'm just seeing patterns that aren't there, but I feel like a lot of these same people who say we should keep politics out of this thing, whatever this thing is, almost always invoke politics for their particular issue. And if you see if you want to have a fun diversion, Google the CIA handbook on simple sabotage and the recommendations for taking things to committee and following the process to prevent things from changing. So there's really no possibility to keep politics out of technology. There's bias implicit in everything we do. It's built into the algorithms, and this isn't necessarily the focus of this talk, but at the same time, it is problematic when you have algorithms that are built with certain data, certain bias. Then if you just watch videos of the soap or the different dispensers trying to detect darker skin color, then you get what at the time in some context seems amusing, but in reality that's indicative of the way that those algorithms, the way that those sensors are programmed. So you've already got a bias embedded in that technology. So everything we do is political. Everything we do is politics. And police, the word police is definitionally political. They're literally the same word. It's the same root word. So the politics and the policing are really part of the same notional concept, going back to the Greek word for the city. And by 500 years ago, you've already got this notion of politics and policing. Policing is the regulation and control of a community. Just think about that, what that means. The regulation control of a community. And I'm not one to argue that there's no need for police, that there's no need for law, that there's no need for order, and maybe some mechanisms and personnel to enforce, regulate and control. That's not an argument I'm going to make today. But I am going to recognize that I'm extremely privileged. Maybe not the most privileged, but certainly in the spectrum of human experience, the country I was born in, the skin color I was born with. I won't say that I grew up poor, but I didn't necessarily grow up rich either. And I didn't live in a trailer park, but I went to school with the kids who did. So that's a little bit of a framing. But at the same time, I definitely have privilege, and I want to recognize that in a meaningful way. And not only do I have privilege, but I am personally benefiting from systemic oppression. So my privilege in this context is built on the systemic oppression of others with less privilege, and we'll talk a bit about that. And in particular, I benefit from white supremacy. I get implicit and explicit benefits from this. And I know this is the case. I won't tell you all my stories today, but let's just say from some of my younger years that choices I made and things I did, things I was associated with, probably would have put me in jail for a long time. You know, looking at the numbers that are given to certain people, or I'd be dead. I can say that with near certainty. One of these two things would have been true if I was given more pigment at birth, or blessed with more pigment. So with that being said, and we all witnessed this. This was one of the many benefits of the fact that we all carry around the supercomputing cameras connected to the internet. This man, George Floyd, was executed, and he was executed by violence. And you know, this is something even a casual observer, you know, my mother said this man died because the other man put his knee on his neck. You know, and we all watched this. We all saw this. Not only was there a knee on a man's neck for nearly 10 minutes, 9 minutes, but there was a crowd of people almost close enough to touch them, telling the person that they're killing him, they're going to kill him. And not only did they not stop, but they looked rather intent on maintaining that violence, executing that person with violence. And this was sanctioned and protected by a prejudice system that we all watched and witnessed, and you know, now we're sort of seeing the aftermath. My daddy plays with me. My daddy reads to me. My daddy tucks me in at night. Please don't kill my daddy. I promise he's a good dad. So you have this little girl and this sign, and you have all the flowers and the other signs and Black Lives Matter and the rest of it. But there's also a few things on the sign. There's names, there's other names, and those other names have stories. And I'm going to tell a few of those, but also there's this theme, I can't breathe, which is interesting. I'm not really okay with this. And leading up to this video that I'm recording right now, I had a hard time watching this from afar. So I can only imagine what it's like to be in this man's family, or you know, of this man's skin color in these cities, watching this. I'm not okay with, and this is not okay. This is simply not okay. I'm watching very far away, and this is something that may or may not be relevant to you, but I definitely have a focus on lots of the stuff that happens around the world, and in particular, I see a lot of the things, or pay attention to a lot of things that happen in the Middle East. And if you've paid any attention to what's happened in Syria in the last few years, in particular, essentially the complete decimation of a lot of the culture and the buildings and the infrastructure, then to see that they essentially decided that this place that's far removed from what's going on, bombed basically back to the Stone Age, that what they were going to do in a show of solidarity was paint "I Can't Breathe" and a portrait of George Floyd, with, as a testament in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. And if you've been someplace where this sort of refugee, or I personally went to Sudan, and Sudan is not a place you go for great vacation as a tourist, and there were a lot of Syrian refugees in Sudan. So at the point where you end up as a refugee in Sudan, you came from someplace bad. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. We watched this man with a knee on his neck say, "I can't breathe," more than once before going limp, losing his life. We witnessed it. That's not the first time we've witnessed "I can't breathe." There was another video that the world watched when a man with another man on his back, with a chokehold, being held down by another group of men, said, "I can't breathe," 11 times. 11 times, "I can't breathe," and that didn't matter. That didn't matter enough to stop. And this man, Eric Garner, also lost his life. And with that video that we all saw, or we all had the opportunity to see, there was a grand jury that decided not to indict. Not only did they not indict any of the officers, but the person who took the video was basically persecuted for doing so. So the fact that that person had dared to record this other man being murdered, choked to death, "I can't breathe" 11 times, the system persecuted the person with the camera. I don't think this is okay. This is not okay. This is one of the more disturbing videos. So this is Philando Castile, who was pulled over in the passenger seat with there was a broken tail light. So minor traffic stop. There's roughly 90 seconds between the person getting out of the car. So they're pulled over. There's a video. Officer comes to the car. He gets the ID, and then this man, this responsible, law-abiding citizen, who was later, they try to demonize him for the little bit of marijuana that was found in the car, but he informs the officer that he has a firearm, a legal firearm, that he's licensed to carry a firearm, and within seconds of informing the officer, in a relatively calm, measured manner, the officer fires 7 shots into the car, 5 of which hit Philando Castile, 2 of which penetrated his heart, and he was killed. This officer was acquitted, and I think it's also interesting. This is in Minneapolis. Some of the same players involved in terms of the chief of police or the same names from the same place in slightly different time. The officer that shot him had recently, I think 6 months previous to this, gone through quote unquote warrior training, which was a nonstop barrage of how, you know, you have to be violent, vigilant and violent to protect yourself in the line of duty. And you can watch the video if you've never seen this video. I find it disturbing, but I don't understand how anyone could watch this video and think that that is the way that a citizen should be treated, and that this was a act within the law, you know, under the letter of the law, or you know, whatever interpretation you want to have for how you should be able to, as a law officer, as a law enforcement officer, take someone's life because you're informed they have a firearm. That's not okay. This is Freddie Gray. So if you've never heard this story, this was a man who was picked up. This one you don't have video evidence, and the story is kind of all over the place with what happened. But he was picked up, I believe, something like 4 blocks away from the police station, but it takes them somehow 30 minutes to get there, and there's these other stops, and then they call the ambulance. But this man who was picked up for whatever reason and in police custody got, this is the quote unquote, you know, doctor's assessment of what's happening, that there's injuries resembling those suffered in a diving accident. They were caused by an abrupt force to his neck. So something that happened to this man in police custody created a fracture of 3 vertebrae, injuries to his voice box, and 80% severed spine at his neck. Just think about what kind of trauma it would take to do that to another human. And I believe there are 6 officers involved. There were some charges that were filed, but all the charges were either dropped or the officers were acquitted. Not okay. And this is Sandra Bland, who was found hanged in a jail cell. And this is another one where it's unclear all the details. There's some accounts where, you know, she was injured before going to the cell, and other things where, you know, there's some witnesses and some discrepancies. But the official account is she was found hanged in a jail cell 3 days after being arrested for what's called a pretextual traffic stop, which is essentially the traffic equivalent of stop and frisk. So this woman, for whatever reason, was pulled over, and then they decided, and you know, there is a little bit of a video from this sort of confrontational exchange with the officer, and you know, for whatever reason, that officer decided that this woman needs to be put in jail, and as a result, she is yet another Black person that ended up dead in police custody. And there's, you know, some more details about the story, but essentially at the end of the day, the officer was charged with perjury, and that charge was dismissed in return for never seeking to accept or engage in employment in any capacity with law enforcement. Not okay. This one's the hardest. if you've never seen the video of this one, this is Tamara Rice, and he was I mean, just look at his face, look at his eyes. So this is a 12-year-old boy who was executed with extreme prejudice, and you know, I don't want to give you all the details, but you know, essentially, he had no chance. There's no exchange. They just shot him. Police just drove up and shot him. And the officer who shot this boy, if you look into the case and the, you know, there's some circumstances, and you know, I think it's really sad on several levels. But there's a 911 call that this person has a gun. He's got a toy gun that he was just given that day, and he's playing around with it in a park, just like, you know, any 12-year-old boy with a toy gun would do. And someone decided to call the 911, and then these officers made whatever decisions with the information they had to essentially just execute this boy in a park. And it turns out that the officer who did this had been dismissed or given the option to quit under the pressure of you know, termination. That this officer, that on record it was recorded that this person lacked the emotional stability to be a police officer. And this was in another precinct that I believe was 13 miles away from the city where this happened in Ohio. And you know, just look at his eyes. Just look at this little kid. It's a boy. And there was a grand jury, and the grand jury decided not to indict the officers. And in some other very interesting circumstances, if you go and look into the case of Tamara Rice, what you find is essentially a story where the prosecutors, the state paid prosecutors, were the ones that were antagonistic to any of the expert witnesses or the evidence that would have led to charges or anything against the officers. So they definitely protected the police, which I don't think is okay. And I don't know if anyone else is here with me, but I think there's a pretty obvious pattern if you're following along. And I think that we, you know, especially if you think about systems, which I hope you do, as someone in the tech field, these are not just bad apples. This is a bad system. So these are actions taken in a bad system, and this is, you know, one of the things that I think really plays into lots of other conversations, and I don't want to drag it back into the mundane issues of what we deal with in our organizations, but most of what happens is not a result of individuals. In all cases, you know, a significant fraction of what happens is the system, and the data supports that. So this is, you know, there's a link here with the reference to where I found some of this, and there's more. But if you look at the, you know, this is the stop and frisk incidents in New York, which was policy for quite some time, and according to this, there's 4.4 million New York City stops between January 2004 and 2012. And of those stops in a city where 23% of the population is Black, 52% of the people who were stopped were Black. So that's a massive shift in the relative number. And the whites represent 33% of the population and only 10% of the stop and frisk. And then you can see the numbers for the deaths for those killed by the police. So the police kill a disproportionate number of Black people, and it's not okay either. So this is the officer that was, this is actually a picture of the officer, with his knee on the neck of George Floyd. And he's told repeatedly, you're gonna kill this guy, bro. And he not only doesn't change his posture or release the pressure, but he just has this look in his eye like he not only is entitled to do that, but that he resents the fact that you'd even question his authority to do that. That's his right, and he's entitled to do that. So this is something that was tweeted at probably one of the nicest human beings I've ever met in technology, saying things that really should never be said anyway, but in the context that they were said and the way that they were said, it's not okay. It's not okay with me. And I just imagine the person typing that just kind of having the same look, the same spirit that he's going to show, these other people what it's about. And I don't think that's okay. And reflecting on that, this person, I'm not going to say this is my best friend, but I mean, maybe I wish he was my best friend. He's just a special person, and anyone who met him or did anything around him knows how giving he is and how kind he is and how thoughtful he is about everything, and he puts himself into everything. He gives his all. And this is me taking selfie with him when he picked me up from the airport in his car. And then another time, these are about a year and a half apart, I got to go hang out with Kelsey at his house. And there's a bunch of other times that we got to be in the same place. He doesn't follow me on Twitter because he only follows 30 people, and also I'm probably annoying on Twitter, but he does usually take my phone calls, and I mean, he's just a blessing in my life and inspiring to me. And that someone would think that this person who's given so much to tech and so much to these communities he's part of, that was the thing that they needed to say to this man in that tone and with those words. That's just not okay. And this is Kelsey Hightower, who literally does more than anyone I know. Like, he's one of the hardest working people, and there's other hardworking people too, but I would say Kelsey works harder than me, and he's given more than me. He's better than me at pretty much everything, and that's what he has to experience. And if that's what the best of us has to experience in technology, I can only imagine what tech is like for Black people who aren't so accomplished. You know, that's it's crazy. So one of the things that I see, and I don't always speak out because I don't feel it's my place, but a lot of diversity and inclusion efforts end up kind of pulling people up that are already pretty far up. And it's not that those people don't deserve to be pulled up higher. It's just that it leaves a lot of people down below. And you know, so that if you think about, you know, this notion of privilege, then the people who have the most privilege, you know, they definitely benefit. But then a lot of the diversity and inclusion work that I see ends up benefiting kind of like the next most privilege. And it's not that I don't think those people deserve more. It's that there's all these other people below them, and in particular, how many more, you know, Kelsey Hightowers are out there that are kind of below the radar, that don't have that lift, they don't have that work. And so there's a few things I'm gonna say in a minute, but I think that there's more work to do than this sort of superficial D&I work. So this is, you know, this is not necessarily only about tech, but, you know, I think tech definitely has implications here when, you know, particularly with the power that we have to create solutions for these types of problems. But if you look at what's happening in the United States, and to some degree probably in a lot of other countries, but definitely in the United States, that these systems are set up. You know, when we talk about diversity in tech and bringing talent into technology, there's all these people that are sort of lost before they even get that far, even get that chance. And if you look at the numbers and the way this is set up, you know, this is a little dated, but it's not that old. It's only a couple of years old. It says that 40% of the population, the prison population, is black. You know, from 13% of the population total, 40% is black, and only 6% of the college population is black. So, you know, when people are talking about talent and tech and getting people into it, you know, we're often lifting from the top, but if we think a little bit harder and look at the systems that are in place, there's so many more, and so in some sense so much better use of our energy and resources if we can lift people up from the bottom. And I think personally that starts with education at the lowest level. And if we can solve this, which I know this is not something that gets solved in 1 second, then you know, maybe we get more beautiful minds like Kelsey to do live demos, and maybe we get less black males that go through prison. 25% will go through corrections in their lifetime, and this, I mean, the thing that's crazy about this is we build a system, we allow a system where this is done for profit. There's an incentive built into the system to have these people go to prison. So it's already a deck stacked against someone from a certain background, because it doesn't matter if you step, you know, off the straight and narrow path for yourself, then you're kind of done. You're in the pipeline. And this also goes to the comment I made earlier about myself, because I'm not very good at walking on a straight and narrow line. So leave it at that. And this is just a framing. You know, there's a couple versions of this, but I think this is true. And you know, I see lots of people in lots of positions that have overcome or are struggling with things now. And I'll just say that aloud, the strongest people are not always those who show strength we can see, but those who are winning battles we know nothing about. So a lot of times, we put people on a pedestal because we can see their display of strength, but there's people that we work with, that I work with, that they're overcoming or have overcome so much more that we don't even see. So a safe space is not enough. We have to build safe systems. It's not about a space, it's the system, the inputs and the outputs. You want to feed safety in and keep safety. And also in relation to that, I think it's important that we recognize that if there's bad systems, if there's the school to prison pipeline in place, that there's always going to be bad outcomes. It's set up to have these bad outcomes. And I want to recognize that I could do more. I could have done more before, and I could do more now. And I think there's some straightforward things that I can do and that we can do, and then there's some more nuanced things. And the kind of opportunistic performance of activism is not that interesting to me, but really revisiting these systems from a fundamental level and being part of the kind of overarching political solution to make things change is more interesting. So we must be actively anti-racist. It's not enough to be not racist. We have to oppose racism in all forms actively. And this is like the performative thing. You can't renounce white privilege. It's like the whole system is built on it. So we have to actively dismantle those systems. And it's not that I necessarily want to have less privilege. I want more people to have more privilege. And I think that's possible. So the real opportunity here is to improve the system, improve the systems that we are all part of for everyone. And not just performative, selective, opportunistic activism, but really get to the root of this. And I've had this opinion for a long time, but we see massive fortunes built in technology, and there's philanthropy and people do things, but to me we need to build activism in the order of millionaires, groups of millionaires, maybe even get some billionaires involved, not just sitting on the street, but we need at the highest level, we need to lift from the bottom, but we need to be able to do that from the top. I think it's hard when and we saw this in a lot of other things, not that protesting doesn't have some impact, but if you look at the dynamics of power that really drive things in this country and the world, we need to build these reinforcing systems with the power that we have as technologists, with the influence that we have to build these systems of wealth, not just to perpetuate the bad systems, but to reimagine better ones. So the next time you're looking for a speaker, there's a lot of great speakers out there that, and I know I missed some, and this was me spending 10-15 minutes looking at my own Twitter feed, and some of these people follow me and that I'm friends with, and we have dialogue, and some of these people I just sort of watch from afar. Although if you want to hang out, let me know. But I miss some people, but I just think it's sort of sad, and not to point any fingers, but there's not good representation of these talented people in a lot of these spaces and a lot of these programs. I don't want to call anyone out, and I definitely miss some people, and I should probably go through my feed, and there's definitely people in other time zones or what have you that I miss. But here's a list of some beautiful people with some amazing perspectives and talent, and you shouldn't have them be speakers because they're Black. You should have them be speakers because they're awesome. And I can only imagine how exhausting it is for people of color, of any color, minority, or women for that matter, to be constantly asked to comment about being an underrepresented minority in tech. That's got to be exhausting work. And what we can and should do is celebrate these people for their amazing talent as technologists, not for the fact that they come from these classes. So with that, I want to also point out that this is only one of many wicked problems that are facing all of us, and a lot of them are interconnected and have some similar roots, but there's only enough time for one problem today. So let's move on. So this is another quote from Holocaust survivor. Technology without hatred can be a blessing. Technology with hatred is always a disaster. The combination of hatred and technology is the greatest danger threatening humankind. Simon Wiesenthal. So going forward, we will make mistakes. We will do the wrong thing, but we cannot do nothing. I cannot do nothing. And hopefully this applies from me and for me, but this is adding to this quote from Desmond Tutu. Without forgiveness, there is no future. So at some point, someone has to move past their grievances, and not that that's necessarily needs to be you, and not that that's what we need to do right this second while we're feeling the brunt of the pain, but to move forward into the new systems, to build the new systems at some point, and not that this is anywhere near the gravity of things I've experienced, but I personally feel like I've grown the most when I forgave things and people. And frankly, this is related to everything we do. If we can't improve ourselves, our organizations, and our society, what is the point? I will continue to educate myself. I'm not sure anyone's still listening, but maybe someone learned something today. That's and this is the saddest one to me, but they're all sad. We cannot do nothing. So that may or may not be what you.
Elsa, you're all over the place.
How am I supposed to do anything when she's over here just doing her own thing?
Okay, well, maybe if Dan played more than just one string, we'd all be more on the same page.
Are you out of your mind? Okay, I do the E string. That's my job.
Isn't there an easier way to do this?
I
there
wish.
has to be.
I literally just suggested
Right?
something. Nobody ever listens to me, though,
It's
so.
ridiculous every time.
When your team's not on the same page, things can get weird, fast. Don't make your DevOps team live like this.
El tutto tu tempo es finito, Dan.
See? It's like we're not speaking the same language. I'm out.
GitLab is the only single application for the entire DevOps lifecycle, making sure your teams are all on the same page.
Do you know how to play the E string?
I can learn.
Coming out of this sort of acute period where it's opportunistic and performative is a chance to think deeply and act deeply to build better systems. So thanks for your time.
Okay, it's that time of the show now where we're going to do some news headlines from around the media ops sites, Security Boulevard, DevOps.com, Container Journal. Let's see what we've got. Over on the Boulevard, we have data breach litigation waivers. Be careful what you wish for. So, you know, the litigation waivers have kind of gone arm in arm with insurance around data breach now, around data breaches, and as a way to try to mitigate damages, obviously. But, you know, it's not that simple. Read this article, check it out, think twice, get some good legal advice is the bottom line, and good financial advice. The same goes when you're getting breach insurance. It may not cover what you think it covers. Next up, we have automation, the silver bullet to vulnerability response. Read the article, but, you know, we've been looking for that silver bullet for 20 years. I don't know if it really exists, but have a look at it. Over on DevOps.com, quality at speed. Isn't that the promise of DevOps? Meet COVID-19, and that's by Wolfgang Platz. It's over at Tricentis. Wolfgang's the CTO and one of the founders there. Good article by a very smart guy, so check that one out. CloudBolt acquires Sov Labs, more M&A and consolidation going on. Morpheus Data expands security reach. That's over in our IT as Code neighborhood on DevOps.com. So some good articles there. And then on Container Journal, the case for storage in a single Kubernetes management package. If you care about container-based storage or storage regarding it in containers, good article. Canonical adds support for Windows and Mac OS to micro K8s. The whole micro K8s thing is developing. And Red Hat makes Quarkus more accurate. So have a look at that. Guys, as I always say, this is not an exhaustive list of what's up on those sites. There's more articles than this. Go have a look at them, check them out, enjoy, learn, share. And thanks for listening on our news. We're going to turn things over now to our managing editor, Charlene O'Hanlon, who has a really great interview for you. So, Charlene, take it away.
This is Digital Anarchist.
Hey, welcome back to TechStrong TV, everybody. I am Charlene O'Hanlon, Managing Editor at Media Ops, and I am here now with Dan Garcia, who's the Senior Manager of Cyber Risk and Architecture at Datto. Hey, Dan, how are you? Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Charlene, thank you for having me. Appreciate
Great.
it.
Well, I'm very excited that you're here today. But first, maybe we can get started by you telling me a little bit about Datto, because it's really, I don't think it's a company that a lot of folks who perhaps read our sites are aware of.
Yeah. Datto is this amazing little company that happened to stumble across in Connecticut, and they primarily started off in the channel servicing MSPs, data backup solutions, and kind of grown into a portfolio doing business management, networking, remote management of endpoints. So really, really quality company, quirky, and just a great culture to work for.
All right, great. So for those listening in at home, MSPs, managed services providers, and so dealing with a lot of customer-related issues having to do with IT, basically kind of working as an I don't want to really say like an outsourcing arm, but working with managed services providers to help them help their customers, basically. So you guys definitely are seeing all facets of how technology is impacting not only businesses and their end user customers, but also those who service those businesses.
Yeah, that's right. So altogether, we have just about 17,000 partners or MSPs we work with. They're supporting hundreds of customers themselves, and yeah, it's kind of interesting. Sitting on the perch of that and seeing just really how they do what they do, and being a part of that whole story.
Well, so, let's talk a little bit about that, because, so much has changed in the past few months as organizations have had to scramble to kind of keep their systems up and running and keep their employees not only safe, but productive during the pandemic and the work from home directive. So now that a lot of states are kind of relaxing the rules and they're moving into kind of these phase one, kind of get back to normal, if that's what you want to call it, but these new issues and these new directives that are now being relaxed. So companies are, I'm sure, having some issues getting their employees back to the office from the perspective of ensuring that their systems are safe. When by safe, I mean that they're free of viruses, that they're not going to bring down the network the first time they connect to it. So, there's a lot of those basic cyber hygiene issues. So what are you hearing from your clients, and what are some of the issues that they are seeing right now?
Yeah, so when you take a company that's designed to work within four walls of a standard brick and mortar business, right, and really displace them to remote locations, unless you've planned for that event, a lot of your controls, a lot of the security measures, even the servicing of the endpoints themselves, they're relying on being within that network. So depending upon what they were able to do at the time and the technology they had available, they may have had more success during this period, or it might have been a bit of a grind through that, getting people up and working again. Some of the guidance that we're kind of sharing with our partners is, take this time to take inventory of the things that might have changed, were new devices brought in by employees, were there home devices? If there were home devices, personal devices being used, how much data might be on those endpoints and making sure they purge that, but also just taking account of any net new services that you might have kind of purchased to get over this period, and just say, all right, well, what's needed, what can go away, but also taking a look at those suppliers, those critical suppliers that may have failed you during this time. This is a kind of a business continuity event. Big enterprises plan for this. MSPs are no different, and their customers ought to view it in the same way. And if during this time of need, there was some critical vendor that just didn't meet the SLA, it's probably worth having that conversation and looking to see if that's the right partner for you.
That's an interesting thought. I don't think a lot of folks have really thought about it from that perspective. I think it's been more of a survival mode, if you will, that a lot of folks have been in. But yeah, I guess if your vendor partners haven't been able to perform well for you during this time of crisis, really what would they do if things were worse? So that's a really, really good point. So when we are talking about getting employees back on the network, and using the systems that they were using on their home networks, and possibly even using some of the personal devices, do companies need to kind of vet each individual device before they get back on the network, or are there certain, maybe, I don't know, steps that employees can take to kind of prep their devices, if you will, to, for when they come back into the office, to make sure that they're not unknowingly unleashing any malware or anything that's going to, bring down the network or compromise?
Sure. Yeah, generally, managed service providers leverage a platform called an RMM, or remote monitoring management tool set. And generally, those work off network fairly well, as long as they're not dependent on something like SCCM for Windows to really do the patching. Antivirus systems, very similarly, they should be okay. So if it was a managed endpoint, and you happen to have a VPN to get into your kind of internal resources, you're probably in the best position. One of the more, I guess, troublesome positions is personal devices that were being used at home. They were relying on, the built-in automatic patching mechanisms that exist in the operating systems. Whatever antiviruses programs might have been on the device itself. And really, you bring those threats into your environment, whether working from home or bringing that device back in. So, part of that assessment that somebody should be doing as devices and data coming back into the business is really saying what's managed, what's not managed, to the degree that it's an unmanaged device and the employee is willing to bring that back in. Maybe it's just let's tidy up, clean up anything that might have been installed, and if those devices that the employee were still using or were using before COVID hit are available to them, transitioning them back, just helping them move the data over. The last thing you want them to do is kind of move all their business data up to a personal Drive or iCloud account and move it back down and maybe leave some kind of resident somewhere. So you want to manage that data as best you can.
Yeah, I was going to ask you actually about things like Google Drive or OneDrive or any of those cloud-based storage services. How can an organization kind of corral all that data, and how big of an issue might that be?
Yeah, I mean, it's dependent upon the suite they use. So if you happen to be an Office 365 shop and you're providing those tools, you're probably in a better position. The same if you're using G Suite. Management is pretty easy. I mean, it's part of a corporate account. Mm-hmm. If you're in a situation where they're using standard consumer level Gmail and Drive, that's probably been a problem that's been ongoing anyway. And it might be something that you might want to identify. I mentioned doing an inventory and looking at suppliers, but it's also a good time to see what tools worked well for this scenario, knowing that we might not be out of the woods just yet, and saying, well, if we need to send people home again, is those the right tools we actually want them using moving forward?
So you actually kind of bring up an interesting idea, which is the fact that we're probably going to be having this issue again. I don't think anybody believes that this is a one-time deal, and so I think with that in mind, I think a lot of organizations are really more open to the idea of having employees work from home, at least on a part-time basis. And then, that way, when the next wave hits, everybody will be that much more prepared. So where do you see managed services providers kind of fitting into that paradigm? I mean, are there more opportunities for managed services providers in this new environment? Maybe new services that they could offer their customers, or just kind of ways to kind of keep their customers' networks more cyber hygienic, if you will?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think those providers that have the skill depth in remote computing, virtual desktops was very big in the enterprise space, especially for business continuity reasons. And if you happen to have the skill sets for that, it's worth looking to see, dusting off that playbook and seeing how I can make an offering. For those that want to leverage existing desktops, laptops, something that's a little bit more mobile, obviously laptops, making sure you have a management strategy that works no matter where the endpoint is, making sure you have network protections that also protect while they're in the home. Just like in the day, we would say, if I wanted to work from a Starbucks, would I be secure? Well, really anywhere is important, right? And taking a look at your tech stack and saying, do I have the technologies to really accomplish that? Now is the time. Managed service providers actually have a leg up because they can go back to their customers. They've experienced a difficult event. And while some might be pulling back, there's going to be some that are wanting to prepare for this, knowing that, hey, I lost some dollars because I just couldn't support this environment. What can I do to improve that? So this is really the time to kind of rush in and say, here's some additional offerings to supplement what we were doing. I'd like to talk to you about it.
What about additional technologies, different types of technologies? I mean, should there be maybe on security, either device security, network security, or cloud security, or any other type of applications or services that would be helpful for organizations with employees that are working remotely at least part of the time?
Yeah, so I'll kind of break down a couple of different components, right? So from like a productivity suite, if you're leveraging standard Gmail and not a corporate G Suite or an Office 365 account, just the inherent security benefits that you gain from that and being able to control the data. From a productivity standpoint, it's worth kind of investing and moving in that direction. If you're looking at endpoint management, at a very high level, it's the RMM kind of remote management monitoring of the endpoint, but also making sure that there's the adequate security suite and there's no shortage of options that you can look at. If you're truly going to be in a mode where you want the employee to work from anywhere, maybe a traditional VPN, traditional firewall at the office doesn't make sense. There's a lot of technologies, cloud-based firewalls that allow you to have those network-based security protections, inspection, kind of category filtering, signature-based detection that really help protect, preventing those threats from getting through. So those are some areas that I'd probably look at. If you're really concerned about managing and having your data in one spot and still protecting that old model, virtual desktop solutions do provide that ability to let an employee bring whatever they want to bring at home, but allow that data to be centrally located in a data center that the MSP manages or one of the business itself.
Awesome. All right, great. Well, Dan, thank you very much for kind of walking us through what MSPs have been seeing and really what organizations can kind of consider either, in a new entirely work from home environment or at least a partial one. So thanks again. Appreciate your expertise.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
All right, great. Okay, everybody, please stick around. We've got lots more TechStrong TV coming up, so stay tuned.
Disruption is occurring across every aspect of IT. Open source, cloud services, DevOps, and cloud-native software architectures are democratizing IT and radically transforming how business is done. The old ways of creating software and doing IT are being replaced with agile, flexible, faster, and cheaper methods, benefiting vendors and users alike. Accelerated Strategies Group is out to democratize access of industry expertise and knowledge. We use our expertise and experience to offer insightful, intelligent, useful information in a variety of formats relevant to the IT community: digital events, videos, reports, assessments, workshops, and implementation projects with tech vendors, IT organizations, and business leaders. We widely and openly share our work products, often for free. Analyst reports these days aren't worth more than a graph or chart that tells a story or illustrates a market trend. We work with developers, DevOps teams, cloud architects, security engineers, and transformation leaders most every day, creating and implementing transformational strategies and technologies. We're not just thinkers, we're also doers.
Hey, thanks very much, Charlene. All right, we're going to head over to the Analyst Corner now, where our very own Mitchell Ashley has some great stuff for you. Mitchell, take it away.
Well, it's been an incredibly busy week. I don't know if you've followed all the things happening, certainly in the world. It's devastating, some of the things that are happening in our cities and the people in them, how they're being treated and the brutality and inequity. As we look more in our technology world and the things that are happening, TechStrong Con was a big thing that happened this week, being part of it, but also listening to the great presentations, speakers, talks, etc. in TechStrong Con. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about or you haven't checked it out, it's not too late because all of those talks are available on streaming at techstrongcon.com, including yours truly, where I'm talking about strategic DevOps and the new normals or the next normals. There's one talk that I thought was particularly good that just stood out as one of the best, and there certainly were multiple, but I thought it was in particularly good. And that was Emmett Keefe's talk, where he was giving his sort of what's happening in the world. Let's give a current state of what he's hearing from all the companies that he talks with. Now, he's an operating partner and founder at Insight Ignite. They were started back in 2014, private equity firm. He said that he talks to about 10 companies a day. I don't know about you. I don't often talk in with 10, maybe close to that on some days. Not nearly that many, though. And he shared what some of the things that are coming kind of to him in all the various discussions. And so I'm just going to give you a few highlights and encourage you to go check out the full picture. Everyone's trying to understand, well, what's the impact to businesses? What are people doing? What should they be doing in our businesses today to weather the storm, break through the recovery, and emerge whenever, whatever, however that looks? And so we had some really insightful things I thought to say. In particular, the focus around digital transformation and accelerating any digital projects. Matter of fact, he gave some examples and sort of the trend where in most businesses, if it's not a digital project, set it aside. Those are taking priority. Matter of fact, such a priority that we want them done now. It's even greater priority than it was before. So they're accelerating at kind of breakneck speed like we've never seen before. And if you're working on a waterfall project, it's probably or likely going to come under pressure, maybe even set aside in favor of agile projects, because businesses are seeing during this sense of urgency around COVID and the economic crisis that getting projects done fast, quick, not only on time, but way ahead of time, in days and weeks, maybe a month, but not months and years. So it's time to really rethink if you're still leading waterfall projects or really haven't embraced Agile, really haven't embraced DevOps. It's time to get on those latter two wagons, I think, for certain. I think another interesting trend that he talked about is companies have noticed a significant uptick in productivity by people working at home. May not be true in all cases, but I've certainly seen it. Matter of fact, many people are having to kind of moderate themselves so they don't overwork now that they're at home all the time and don't have to commute, et cetera. And we're opening businesses back up, but there are companies that are considering leaving all or even as much as 70% of the workforce in large corporations at home. Let them work from home. If it's not broke, let's leave it. Don't fix it, right? Let's leave things as well and continue that trend. I think another interesting thing is that not only have we noticed this in the IT organizations, but that the CEOs, the head of organizations, are beginning to ask, well, if we can get these things done so fast, things that have been going on for years to try to get these projects done. For example, one of the examples that Emmett gave was around selecting a collaboration tool, Microsoft Teams, I think it was, and concerns around security and in the cloud, which I thought those debates are over, but I guess they still are happening. And, when it was made a priority, like we're doing this, let's make it happen, make it as secure as you can, but we're going to make this happen. The decision was made in days and weeks and happened. I mean, literally in a few days, all of a sudden people are all on collaboration tools and working that way, or beginning to anyway. So I think it really causes us to step back and ask, why are we taking so long to get things done? Yes, it might be about getting people on board. It may be pursuing legitimate issues, but are we really doing the business right by taking too long and an unbearable process that really could be much, much shorter? And we could prioritize the issues and really cover the critical things and let the less than critical go by the wayside. I'm not saying cast aside all your concerns and privacy of data and those kind of things. Those are all pretty straightforward, but you know what? We're all in the risk management business, whether it's do we put money on this project or do we do this security tool or change this process? And ultimately, we've got to get things done. And I think this is pointing out to us and to our organizations that look, when we have to, we can get stuff done. So why aren't we performing that way or close to it in quote unquote normal times? Matter of fact, Emmett asked the question, one of his big questions going forward is this going to continue? How do we keep up the sustained innovation, the sustained acceleration and implementation of digital projects? Now, I've just barely touched the surface of some of the things Emmett talks about. And sorry, Emmett, apologize to you. I don't mean to steal your content. I was just so taken back by the content that you had, the insights you had from that presentation. So head on over to TechStrongCon.com and check out Emmett's talk. And there are many, many others I think you would find engaging and beneficial. So as we wrap out the week, hope that everyone be well, that you're safe, be safe, and take care of yourselves and take care of each other. Let's do that.
DevOps.com is the #1 online destination for DevOps education and community building. DevOps.com covers all aspects of DevOps, including DevOps best practices and tools, DevOps culture, DevSecOps, business impact, continuous testing, continuous delivery, and more. DevOps.com has the largest collection of original DevOps content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.devops.com to learn more. DevOps.com, where the world meets DevOps.
Thank you, Mitchell. All right, wrapping up for Friday. It can't be a wrap-up until we do the channel roundup. And if we're doing channel roundup, that means it's time for Mike Vizard. So here's Mike Vizard with our channel roundup.
Hey, thanks, Alan. So this week we had the Conf 2020 show hosted by Chef. They were talking about how they're going to apply a concept that they created for servers in the cloud to deploy applications and manage infrastructure as code out to the desktop. The idea is you can manage the desktop, the operating system, all the compliance requirements remotely from one centralized interface. This is a big deal now because people are trying to automate everything in IT these days. They may not have as many people as they used to have. Plus, whatever folks they do have are probably not going to get much additional help because headcount's been frozen. In many ways, that helps partners because they'll be looking for external expertise. The interesting thing here, though, is that only so many people in IT know how to programmatically manage infrastructure using a tool like Chef. So there's going to be a lot more people in the channel with that expertise. So I wonder if there's an opportunity for folks to build a managed service around this Chef tool called Chef Desktop, which lets you manage fleets of desktops. They also are moving to automate the management of compliance. They're using their Chef Inspect tool and adding a flavor on top of that allows you to make sure that everything is consistent with the Center for Internet Security Standards, and it will automatically remediate everything accordingly. And of course, they updated their app delivery platform. So I think there's a lot going on at Chef these days and might be worth checking out from a partner perspective. There was a second conference of interest this week. It was Pega World Inspire. They were talking about something called the Pega Process Fabric. They have brought together a framework that makes it easier to stitch together various elements of code to automate a business process. A lot of times when you look at an application, all it really is a codified version of a business process. The challenge is organizations want to figure out how to reduce the total cost of business, not just IT. So they want to automate more processes than ever. That's part of this whole conversation around digital business transformation. But we need tools to do that. So Pega's out talking about how to actually stitch together multiple business processes in a way that drives down the cost of business. I think that's a conversation that's going to resonate with customers. And these days, they're not willing to have a conversation about, hey, can you help me take a few points off the IT budget? They want to have a conversation about how do we drive more margin to the bottom line or increase revenue. So for partners to be relevant, need to have a bigger conversation. Meanwhile, BMC Software this week announced that it has closed the deal for CompuWare. We are going back in time here, but there seems like there's an opportunity to modernize all these mainframe applications. And this too is becoming more relevant because people don't have the time to rewrite all those applications. They need to modernize them where they are. A lot of them are things that are core. They're banking applications and OLTP applications that the business runs on. So the time and effort to rewrite them may not be there as it once was, or at least the patience to do that is not there as it once were. But we need APIs that integrate those things with various digital applications that are being built. So CompuWare has a lot of DevOps tools that help you do that. And BMC is now saying, hey, we're going to marry those tools together with our infrastructure management tools for automating that process, and it will be one end-to-end capability, which they will then position themselves against IBM and, of course, Broadcom that bought CA Technologies. It'll be interesting to see if there is still money to be made in that old mainframe, but given the fact that a lot of partners ignore this space, it might be something to look at. Also, new and interesting, Rancher Labs has a thing called Longhorn that they are now shipping. It gives access to block storage on a Kubernetes cluster. That's kind of key because you want to be able to build stateful applications on the Kubernetes cluster and not just always be dependent upon accessing a third-party array. Of course, you can use Longhorn to also access that third-party array, but that's a secondary part of the story. Primary thing here is that this is a project that's still a sandbox, and it's managed underneath the auspices of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And I think you might want to check out what's going on here in the whole notion of persistent storage in Kubernetes. A lot of these microservices-based applications that were first built were stateless, and that's kind of mildly interesting, but enterprise apps require them to be stateful. And I think there's going to be a huge opportunity in this space, and maybe the place where the partners find Kubernetes a lot more relevant. Speaking of the CNCF, finally, congratulations to Priyanka Sharma, who used to be over at GitLab. She is now the new general manager for the CNCF, and she comes with a lot of expertise in the realm of technology alliances especially. I think a lot of the partners are not paying enough attention to the CNCF, but if you want to learn about how to manage Kubernetes and deploy all the add-on products and services that go around it, CNCF's the place to go do that. They make all that information available for free, and they also are interested in having as many new members as they can get. So by all means, check them out. Finally, speaking of things to check out, this week is TechStrong Con. On the DevOps.com website, you'll find a link to an online conference hosted by our friends over there at DevOps. They're putting together live speakers and some videos and things you should check out. And it's really a celebration of all the great technology that has allowed us to keep going in the pandemic. I don't think we'd all have gotten very far without it, and things would be a lot worse. So we're going to take a minute and for everybody to just appreciate everything that went into that and the opportunities that go with that. And with that, everybody, good selling, and back to you, Alan.
With the COVID-19 pandemic, it is important to protect yourself and others from spreading the virus. Prevention and personal safety is key. Here are the top ways you can protect yourself and others. Wash your hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Avoid touching your face. Practice social distancing and avoid high-risk potential people. If you are showing symptoms, stay at home. If you must go out, wear a face mask. Always cover coughs and sneezes with a tissue or use the inside of your elbow. Clean and sanitize frequently touched surfaces daily. Together, we can prevent this pandemic.
All righty. Hey, Michael, thank you very much. Guys, it's Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Thank you very much to everyone who attended TechStrong Con and make that a success. If you haven't visited, go check it out. It's still there for you. It's just not live. We will be back Monday. Next week we are with fresh shows Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Looking forward to seeing you. But until then, enjoy your weekend. Stay safe, stay well, stay strong. TechStrong. This is Alan Schimmel. We're out.